In a bold pivot from Europe to Asia, the Trump administration unleashes a new strategy, uniting the US, Japan, and the Philippines into an ironclad triangle. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth storms the region with one mission: contain the Chinese Communist Party. From Manila to Tokyo, missiles are deployed, commands upgraded, and alliances forged in steel, ready to deter aggression and secure the Indo-Pacific. As tensions rise and Taiwan hangs in the balance, the question looms: will strength bring peace or spark the next showdown?
We are going to put America first. But America first does not mean America alone.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth embarked on his first official visit to Asia at the end of March 2025, a key step in the Trump administration's recalibration of its Asia-Pacific strategy, with a clear focus on countering China and the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. Hegseth's itinerary began in Manila, where he arrived in the Philippines on March 27, 2025, and held a series of symbolic and substantive meetings on March 28. At Malacañang Palace, he met with Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Hegseth told Marcos, "Deterrence is necessary globally, but it is especially critical in your country and this region, given the threat posed by the CCP." In a joint press conference with Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro, Hegseth pledged to re-establish deterrence in the Indo-Pacific and criticized the weakness of the Biden administration for emboldening Chinese provocations. He outlined specific commitments, including the deployment of anti-ship missiles, unmanned surface vehicles, and special operations training in the Philippines, as well as a $500 million fund to modernize the Philippine military. He emphasized, "Friends should stand shoulder to shoulder to deter conflict and ensure freedom of navigation, whether you call it the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea." During the joint press conference with Teodoro, he stated,
"So together we'll encourage our other partners and allies in the region to step up their efforts and their cooperation to increase defense capabilities and strengthen deterrence. We have already set a robust agenda for the next few years. Our staff and both of us are going to remain actively engaged. It reflects the strength, as I said, of our ironclad alliance, particularly in the face of communist China's aggression in the region. And our partnership demonstrates our commitment to peace and security in the Indo-Pacific."
Subsequently, Hegseth arrived in Tokyo on March 29 and met with Japanese Defense Minister Gen Nakatani and Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba on March 30. During his visit to Japan, he announced that the U.S. military command in Japan would be upgraded to a war-fighting headquarters and attended a U.S.-Japan joint commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Iwo Jima, reinforcing historical ties. Hegseth called Japan an indispensable partner in deterring CCP military aggression. In talks with Nakatani, he formally announced the upgrade of U.S. Forces Japan to a war-fighting headquarters to align with Japan's newly established Joint Operations Command, ensuring faster and more effective joint response capabilities. He told reporters,
"We are going to put America first. But America first does not mean America alone. America's warriors stand shoulder to shoulder every day with their Japan Self-Defense Force counterparts. Our forces operate and train together across all domains to uphold deterrence. America and Japan stand firmly together in the face of aggressive and coercive actions by the Communist Chinese."
He also stressed that the U.S. is committed to maintaining a strong, stable, ready-to-fight and credible deterrence in the Indo-Pacific, including the Taiwan Strait, and highlighted Japan's frontline role in a potential Taiwan Strait crisis as critical. Hegseth's tough stance on China underscored the urgency of the Trump administration's China strategy. While avoiding direct threats of war, he stated, "We do not seek war with the CCP, but our duty is to ensure we are always prepared," clearly articulating a renewed strategic concept of peace through strength. Hegseth's Asia trip clearly conveyed the Trump administration's strategic pivot, emphasizing three key points: Strategic shift. The U.S. is pivoting from Europe to Asia and expects allies like the Philippines and Japan to take on greater military and financial responsibilities. His earlier remarks in Europe had already laid the groundwork for this policy, signaling a reduced focus on Europe and a redirection of resources to the Indo-Pacific. Alliance integration. He pushed for the establishment of a U.S.-Japan Joint Operational Command and committed to upgrading Philippine military capabilities, aiming to forge a tighter regional security alliance to counter China. He also urged allies to increase defense budgets and purchase U.S. weapons, consistent with Trump's transactional diplomacy approach. Targeting China. Hegseth portrayed China as the primary source of regional instability, citing disputes in the South China Sea, East China Sea, and the Taiwan issue. He made clear that the U.S. strategy is to contain China's influence and, if necessary, prepare for military confrontation. From Hegseth's remarks, it is evident that the Trump administration's Asia strategy centers on building a strengthened network of allies to encircle and counter China. Unlike the Biden administration's broader coalition-building approach, this strategy focuses more intensely on bolstering hard power. Upgrading the U.S. command in Japan and enhancing Philippine military capabilities are part of a multi-front containment strategy aimed at pressuring China across multiple theaters, including maritime disputes, Taiwan security, and regional dominance. The ultimate goal is clear. The CCP is seen as the greatest threat to a free and open Indo-Pacific, and Hegseth's visit lays the foundation for this deterrence-first policy. Should Beijing test U.S. resolve, this policy could escalate further. Of course, the intent is not immediate war, but ensuring the U.S. and its allies hold the upper hand in any future confrontation. Among these priorities, Taiwan is of critical importance to the U.S., encompassing military, defense, economic, and geopolitical dimensions, making it a pivotal node in the Asia-Pacific and a key factor in curbing China's ambitions. Taiwan's strategic value. Taiwan is at the heart of the first island chain, stretching from Japan through Taiwan and the Philippines down to Indonesia, forming a natural barrier separating China's coastal waters from the broader Pacific. If China controls Taiwan, it would breach this barrier, gaining unrestricted access to the Pacific and posing a direct threat to U.S. military bases in Guam, Hawaii, and beyond. Moreover, Taiwan is just 100 miles from China's southeast coast. If it falls into Beijing's hands, it would serve as an outpost for China to project military power outward. Located just 70 miles from Japan's Yonaguni Island and close to the Philippines, Chinese control of Taiwan would directly threaten key U.S. allies, Japan and the Philippines. For the U.S., ensuring Taiwan remains out of China's grasp equates to maintaining a security buffer in the Western Pacific, significantly complicating China's bid for regional dominance. Military simulations underscore Taiwan's irreplaceable value. For instance, a 2023 war game by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, showed that without forward bases in Japan and the Philippines, the U.S. would struggle to effectively defend Taiwan in a conflict. Taiwan's geographic position makes it a strategic fulcrum for U.S. and allied defense against Chinese expansion. Economic leverage. Taiwan is a cornerstone of the global technology supply chain, particularly in the semiconductor industry. According to 2024 estimates from the Semiconductor Industry Association, Taiwan produces over 60% of the world's semiconductor chips and over 90% of the most advanced chips, 7nm and below. These chips are vital to U.S. military equipment, F-35 fighters and missile systems, as well as consumer electronics and artificial intelligence, iPhones and AI infrastructure. If China seizes Taiwan, it could not only cut off this supply but also trigger a global economic collapse. Bloomberg Economics estimates that a one-year disruption of Taiwan's semiconductor supply chain would cost the global economy $2 trillion. While the U.S. has pushed domestic chip production through the CHIPS Act, it remains unable to replace Taiwan's capacity in the short term. Taiwan's significance in global trade is equally undeniable. Over half of the world's container ships pass through the Taiwan Strait. If China controls this strategic waterway, it could threaten maritime trade for the U.S., Europe, and their allies, delivering a massive blow to the U.S. and global economies. Geopolitical implications. Taiwan's democratic system stands in stark contrast to the CCP's authoritarian model, serving as a symbol of the U.S.-led free and open Indo-Pacific vision. If Taiwan falls to China, the U.S. would suffer a significant blow to its regional influence, and it would embolden Chinese expansion, encouraging Beijing to pursue bolder claims in the South China Sea, East China Sea, and even the Arctic. It would shake Allied confidence, causing Japan, South Korea, and Southeast Asian nations to question U.S. willingness to counter China elsewhere. It would impact the global order, allowing Beijing to reshape international rules on trade, technology standards, and human rights in its favor. Thus, Taiwan's status is not just about geography. It's a nexus of U.S. economic security, military strategy, and ideological commitments. For the U.S., maintaining Taiwan's independence, or at least ensuring it remains outside CCP control, is essential to preserving the Asian power balance, securing allied relationships, and protecting the global tech economy. This is why Taiwan is considered a non-negotiable red line, even if it means sustained tensions or potential conflict with China. The U.S. is currently walking a careful line between deterrence and provocation, ensuring sufficient military deterrence to make Beijing recognize that the costs of aggression outweigh the benefits, while avoiding excessive provocation that could accelerate conflict. The role of Japan. If the CCP plans to invade Taiwan, it must first weaken U.S. and Japanese military capabilities in the region, particularly U.S. bases in Okinawa, as a prerequisite for success. Okinawa, just 400 miles from Taiwan, hosts about 26,000 U.S. troops across bases like Kadena Air Base, MKS Futenma, and Camp Butler. Kadena, for instance, houses F-15 fighters, KC-135 tankers, and E-3 AWACS, providing rapid air superiority and reconnaissance over the Taiwan Strait. Additionally, Japan's Self-Defense Forces, JSDF, in Okinawa, deploy missile defense units and maritime patrol aircraft, forming a robust first line of defense alongside U.S. forces. War games consistently show that U.S.-Japan forces in Okinawa could disrupt a Chinese amphibious assault on Taiwan within hours. Simulations by RAND and CSIS indicate that these forces could use Okinawa's geographic advantage to strike Chinese campaign operations before a successful beachhead is established on Taiwan. A Chinese invasion of Taiwan would require a massive coordinated operation, estimated at 300,000 troops, thousands of ships, and air cover, to cross the 100-mile-wide Taiwan Strait. Without first neutralizing Okinawa's bases, U.S. and Japanese forces could deploy aircraft, submarines, and missiles from Okinawa to target the People's Liberation Army's PLA transport fleet, many of which are vulnerable civilian ferries, and seize air control. The PLA is well aware of this. In 2024, its military exercises included simulated strikes on foreign bases, widely interpreted as rehearsals targeting Okinawa. To maximize its chances of success, China might need to launch preemptive strikes on U.S. bases like those in Okinawa to cripple U.S.-Japan response capabilities before invading Taiwan. Destroying these bases, however, is no easy task. In Okinawa, U.S. facilities are dispersed and fortified, and Japan has significantly bolstered its air defenses in recent years, deploying systems like the SM-3 interceptor. If China fails to neutralize Okinawa's bases first, the U.S. and Japan could quickly counterattack. Should U.S.-Japan forces remain operational, the PLA could lose at least 50 ships and 20,000 troops within a week. Furthermore, Japan's Yonaguni Island, just 70 miles from Taiwan, could disrupt PLA logistics even with small JSDF units. Attacking Japan itself would be more than a tactical decision for the CCP. It would be a formal declaration of war against both the U.S. and Japan. Under the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty, the U.S. is obligated to defend Japan, and Hegseth has explicitly stated that an attack on Japan would be considered an attack on the U.S. Given this, China is more likely to rely on coercive tactics, such as blockading Taiwan, cyber attacks, or economic sanctions, rather than direct military action to avoid triggering U.S.-Japan military intervention. Japan's industrial strength. Japan's industrial prowess in precision machinery, shipbuilding, and advanced military production F-35 fighters, makes it an indispensable pillar of U.S. military operations in the Asia-Pacific. This manufacturing capacity not only strengthens local supply chains, but also amplifies strategic cooperation, especially as the U.S. adjusts its strategy to confront China. Japan dominates the global market in high-precision tools, including CNC machines, robotics, and semiconductor manufacturing equipment. Companies like Fanuc and Tokyo Electron provide technology critical to producing everything from missile guidance components to radar systems, key elements of U.S. military operations in the region. Japan's shipyards, such as Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, MHI, and Kawasaki Heavy Industries, rank among the world's best. They have built the Izumo-class helicopter carriers, now adapted for F-35B fighters, and Soryu-class submarines with advanced air-independent propulsion, AIP. This capability ensures the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, JMSDF, maintains a formidable fleet of over 150 vessels, while also providing repair and refit services for the U.S. 7th Fleet Carrier Strike Group based in Yokosuka. Since 2013, the U.S. has authorized Japan to assemble and produce F-35 fighters. MHI's Nagoya plant serves as a final assembly and checkout FACO facility. By 2025, Japan has received 42 F-35A aircraft and is integrating F-35Bs for its carriers. This not only bolsters Japan's own defenses, but also supports the maintenance and upgrades of U.S. F-35s in the region, reducing reliance on U.S.-based facilities and speeding up turnaround times. In March 2025, the Trump administration pushed for joint U.S.-Japan production of AMRAAM air-to-air missiles and SM-6 interceptors, leveraging Japan's industrial capacity to accelerate output. These weapons are vital for air and missile defense in the Taiwan Strait, and local production in Japan bypasses U.S. domestic bottlenecks, delivering equipment to the battlefield faster. Compared to Taiwan's semiconductor dominance, TSMC's 90% share of sub-7 nm chips, Japan's manufacturing strengths are broader and complementary. Taiwan produces the brains of modern weapons, chips, while Japan builds their bodies, precision gears, hulls, airframes. This division forms a U.S.-reliant technological industrial axis to counter China. Unlike Taiwan's manufacturing, which is vulnerable as a single-point failure, Japan's industrial network, spanning Tokyo, Osaka, and Nagoya, offers greater resilience. Even if Taiwan were attacked, the U.S. could still rely on Japan to sustain military supply chains. Thus, Japan's robust industrial base makes it a force multiplier for the U.S. in Asia. The CCP, of course, recognizes this. PLA exercises often simulate strikes on Japanese industrial hubs like Nagoya, aiming to destroy F-35 assembly plants or shipyards to weaken U.S.-Japan responses. However, Japan is not an easy target. Its growing missile defense systems, SM-3 Block YIA, and U.S.-based defenses mean China would pay a steep price for any attack. This raises the risks for China in pursuing military action against Taiwan. Hegseth's choice of Japan and the Philippines, strategic frontline states in East Asia, for his first visit as defense secretary underscores the Trump administration's focus on strengthening the First Island chain's defenses. It reflects a broader pivot from Europe to Asia, designating the CCP as the primary adversary and pursuing a peace-through-strength geopolitical strategy. Regardless of how Xi Jinping and the CCP respond, with reports suggesting Xi is currently conducting another purge of PLA leadership, the Trump administration's strategy of containing the CCP in East Asia, fortifying the First Island chain, enhancing allied militaries, and maintaining robust deterrence shows no signs of slowing down. Thanks for your watching. We'll see you next time.